the storytelling piece, okay? So getting the right format. So when we know what we want to say, we know who we want to talk to, who we're communicating with, who are the stakeholders. Then you have to figure out what is going to be the right way of presenting your story, depending on those stakeholders, okay? There's many different ways of doing that. Formal reports, articles, blog posts, infographics, or a data slide deck presentation, news style reporting through video or audio. Could be a speaking event, a webinar, a panel discussion. There's lots of different ways that we can take our story and present it to our stakeholder audiences. So thinking about who your stakeholders are, how they are interested in receiving information, will determine the best way to present your story, okay? So in the context of a training, one day training here, I'm not going to go into each of these individually, but what I'm going to do instead is to focus on storytelling as a cross-cutting approach, that no matter how you are going to tell your story in terms of the medium, that this is a way that you can strengthen your storytelling and do a better job of reporting to your stakeholders, regardless of who they are. And if anybody has any particular questions or needs around any of these different kinds of formats, certainly something that we can look at for follow-up training. Katie, I think at the end is going to share a link where we're actually asking for input for trainings that we'll do for 2021. Okay. For now, I'd like to talk to you about storytelling. Okay. I really feel that regardless of the format, even a formal donor report or formal funder report, using a storytelling approach can really help to reach your audience. It helps your reader or your viewer to become immersed in the story you're telling them, okay? We do that by using story arcs, by using vignettes or case studies or testimonials to provide a human example of what's happening, and then using storytelling language, okay? So a story arc, okay, a story arc for most stories, when anybody who has, if you think about the stories that we tell to children or stories that we tell while we're sitting together with family in the evenings, right? Their story has a setup, it has some action that takes place, there's the climax or excitement point, and then there's the what happens next and the happy ever after ending or whatever it is with the story. Okay, so thinking about the way you communicate your impact, even in a formal report where you're setting up your story, you've got your climax of this is the action we took and this is the change or impact that was created and this is what we're looking for next. So thinking about that arc, okay? So it's not just about what we did or what changed. It's also about the context that that was a part of and why it matters and where we're going next. Right. Using vignettes or case studies or testimonials or quotations as a way to provide real life, tangible examples of change. Okay, so we can talk about how many people we trained, or how many farmers are using new techniques, or how many children are in school. And that's important. That's part of the story. It's the action that was taken, but really humanizing who are these children? Who are these farmers? What did they look like? How did they experience this project? What are they doing differently? What are their thoughts and feelings? Can really help to draw a reader in, okay? Makes the information and the story that you're telling more relatable, okay? And we can do that through integration of quotes, testimonials, case studies. We're going to talk about photographs and images a little bit later as well. But no matter who you're reporting to, even if it is a numbers person or a formal funder that you have a contractual relationship with, you can give them the information they want to hear, but doing so in a way that also humanizes and touches them not as their job function, but as a human being, is going to help them to relate better, understand better, remember more about the report that you're sharing. Using storytelling, called storytelling language, okay, means that when you're telling a story, you tend to be, the wording that you use is different than if you were writing, say, in a very formal, scientific, jargony kind of manner, right? So when you're trying to get someone to connect with what you're saying, you have to make it easy. You use words and sentence structure that's lilty, that feels engaging, that makes people want to listen, right? Using simple, direct sentences. So don't beat around the bush. If you've got a point to make the point and then put a point after it. Get to the point. Be succinct. Don't spend 2 pages writing about something that could be said in 1 paragraph and really stand out in people's minds, okay? Integrate thoughts and feelings. So not just what did people learn, but were they excited about what they've learned, okay? Were they relieved that something has changed? So connecting to that experience part that makes it human, as opposed to something that could have been robots experiencing something. Okay, so not just what, but why did it matter? How did it move people? How did it change people? Sprinkling in descriptive details can be really helpful, okay, because sometimes the stakeholders that we're talking to can be really far away and quite disconnected from the people and places where we're implementing our projects. I'm an example of that. I'm sitting in Port Hope, Canada. I'm very far away from where you are all implementing your projects. And I haven't been to all of the places where you're working. So helping me, for example, as a stakeholder, potential stakeholder or partner in your project to understand, what does this place look like? What is the culture like? What was the weather like when this was taking place? And giving me the descriptive, the descriptions, I guess, of the setting and place and context that helps me to imagine what it looks like, okay? And to imagine what it might have felt like to be part of that project or part of that experience. And here's another one. It's a little trick, and you've seen I've been doing it a lot in this particular slide deck as well, is the use of rhetorical questions. It's a really strange thing, but it's very effective in drawing people into the words or into a report. So instead of, say, for example, having a heading or section headings in your report that says context of reporting period, you might say, what was different this reporting period, question mark. Okay. And then it's the person who's reading it thinks, yeah, wait, what was different? Right? They sort of think, yeah, I want to know the answer to that question. And I'm now interested in continuing to read. Or instead of gender analysis, how does this impact women? Question mark. Right? It invites the reader in, it makes them want to find out the answer. So it's just a little trick that you can use. Think about that. If you have, if you are doing reporting, even formal funder or donor reporting, if they haven't given you a template to fill out and you're making your own sections, make sure they have a question mark with them. It makes a big difference. So here's a little example. This is not perfect. Please feel free to critique. This is a maybe traditional formal funding reporter kind of approach, right? Uses technical funder project management language. It says the right things. The funder wants to know, did you train 150 farmers as planned? Yes or no? So here's a way that you could tell a funder, yes, we did. We trained 150 farmers. Well, in fact, here we call them beneficiaries and don't even call them farmers. Who cares about this? Anyone want to know more? Anyone inspired? Anyone thinks this is really important or matters? What about this version? How did you feel? Did you have a different reaction to this second presentation of the information, and why?
Hi, Claire. I think the first one is not quite appealing to me. The second one is quite catching to me. It looks at both the numbers, what happened, and what are the immediate changes that were realized. It actually goes up to the extent of the possible changes that will be done as a result of the training. I don't know, that's how I feel.
Mm-hmm. The what, the so what, and now what?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It captures those questions that you shared with us initially.
Mark?
So I agree with Naomi. However, as a reader of reports, I prefer the shorter version.
Maybe. Again, it depends on the role that you're playing when you're reading those reports, I suppose, too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's true, Claire.
So maybe the first one is appropriate for some of your stakeholders, right?
And at a certain stage of the project.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Just the last thing about the storytelling is I think it is also important to remember that it is okay for your story to not have a happy ending, or it is okay for your story to have some bumps in the road. Okay. It doesn't all have to be smooth. And it is, I think, important when people are reading your reports that they believe them, right? That they are accurate, they're reliable. You're not, I think, don't try to take credit for too much. Be mindful of sort of the role that you played, lessons learned, sure. But being honest about failures or challenges. But you can also then use storytelling to present challenges in a way that leads the reader to learning and adaptation and what's going to and solutions. Okay. So I think, where you do get into, potential trouble, especially with donors or funders, is when you say something didn't work and that's it. And they think, oh, well, it's not working, right? No, it's okay to say something didn't work. And then you say, this is what we're looking at to understand why, and this is how we plan to respond. And even if you don't yet have the solution, talk about how you're working towards the solution. Who are you talking to? What are the things you're thinking about? So just let them know that it's part of a journey. And I would think it would be very rare for you to implement an entire project and not have any hiccups. Okay. So you want to be honest about that. And I think this is it's a sort of a plea, because, we all know that there are organizations out there that pretend like everything is perfect all the time. Every communication you read is nothing but success and wonderful. Everything's great. And I think we do ourselves as a community of practice, as a sector, a disservice by doing that, because we paint an unrealistic picture of what it is like to do our work. And we really need all of our stakeholders to understand the reality of doing community projects, right? And so that they understand what's happening and they can engage and they can play their roles more effectively as well. So we don't want to be contributing to any false notion in funder communities or among government officials that our work should be expected to be smooth sailing all the way, always achieve its expected results no matter what. And everything's always just going to be wonderful, because it's just not. Okay. So we need to be honest about that, but use your storytelling techniques to present it in a way that does feel positive, right? That it feels like progress, even though things have to change or shift, or there's learning to be done along the way.